Oh, damn. I think I'm live. Oh, diddly damn. Oh, shit. I think I'm live. Doo-doo-doo-doo. What hell's to the yeah? Alright. So, first live stream, so we're gonna kick some ass. We're gonna talk about some fighting. And I'm pretty sure there is no one watching. I'm starting about 15 minutes early. But, yeah, it'll be pretty decent. It'll be fun. It looks like we're pretty gold here. I'm not sure how the microphone is or how any of this good stuff is. If I have to bump, I will bump. But we'll get some stuff going here. Oh shit. Welcome. Not sure who it is, but hope you can hear everything okay. Hope it's all kind of sounding good, nothing crazy going on. Feel free to let me know either way, and we will adjust as needed. But I'm not planning on starting until about 7-ish, because I just don't want to, I told everyone I'd do 7, and I don't want to be like, oh yeah, I started at 6:45. Sorry. But if it sounds funny, if it's loud, if it's breathy, let me know and I will adjust. But I think it's Brian watching, but I'm not entirely sure. If it is, what's up, dude? I'm gonna sit here and drink my whiskey. But so there's a lot of background noise. I apologize. My sitting surface is a little on the loud side. But we will handle it and kick some butt. Excuse me. Alright, let's see. I'm going to close out this. Close out non-fighting related things. But, let's see. So there's about a second ping. It's not bad. We'll do a lot of this good stuff. But as it stands right now, I don't actually have a webcam, nor do people want to see my computer space, and I don't necessarily want them to see. How's it going? Got 2 people. It's better than 1. It's 1 + 1 is fun on a bun. But so we're not officially going to start until 7. That's just the time I put on. And so a little quiet. Okay, awesome. Let me bump that up, because right now I'm actually using my headset I used for WoW, and I don't necessarily know how it's going to sound, and I'm not in a financial place to be buying, super nice mics at the moment. Sounding a little better. I can also probably move the mic a little closer so we get a nice, good sound. And, use the lot of money I've paid for voice lessons and project my voice. Okay. Awesome. Neat. Yeah, but how's it going, man? Glad to see you here. Really looking forward to it. Kind of for my bros that are hanging out right now, I'll go over this again, but this actually came about because Steve was like, dude, you should do like a Discord thing on fighting analysis. And I kind of hemmed and hawed, but the more I thought about it, I just realized, I'm like, this would be just boatloads of fun, man. And so I said, you know what, screw it, I'm gonna do it. And I'm also planning on doing fighting interviews. I actually have an interview scheduled with Aaron, listening to noise music. Ah, boy. I was actually listening to some lo-fi earlier, just chilling out. That was post the Necrophagist, because, bass sweeps make everyone super happy. Oh, I got cough. Yeah, man, I heard Christmas was fun. Hope you guys didn't go too nuts. I don't think they actually started doing family Christmas until I was long gone. I think y'all started in like 2012, 2013, and but it always looks like a blast. And I know that you were talking about the pulled pork on Facebook earlier. That shit looked delicious, man. Um, so as I was saying, kind of just doing stream of consciousness right now, but I plan on doing everything. My plan is to redo the old Spin and Brennan shot definition videos. I may talk to Archive about that and see if I can get his help on that, since I don't necessarily have the greatest of camera equipment. And by that I mean I don't have any camera equipment. But and do that. I want to do fighting interviews with big name fighters like Peter. I'm gonna see if I can get Delos on, and just talk with people that Bellegarth as a whole probably doesn't have a ton of contact with, due to either their big imposing figures or they're busy fighting everyone because everyone is just slobbering at the mouth to go fight. Those guys. So let me actually see if I can. Let's see if I can turn this into a new pin reel. I want to keep this kind of somewhere where I can see it, so I can do all this good stuff. So that did not actually work how I wanted it to. Go figure. But we will figure it out as we go. There we go. So, well, I just think I just duplicated the tabs. Go figure. Hold on, let me. Forgot I don't have it split. Nah, that's all right. We'll carry on as usual. I'll just have to tab flip for now as I, figure out what the hell I'm doing. Because in all truth, I have zero idea what I'm doing. But in due time, my friends, in due time. So let me go to this goodness. Let's get. I want to make sure. Oh, hey, we got some more people. How's it going, fam? Hope everything is well. Hope we are doing everything decently. We can get a nice, clean stream. It's hard to tell. I don't really necessarily like YouTube's interface, but I didn't want to dick around with Twitch. Just, I'm sure people could be like, yeah, do this and this, but I don't necessarily want to. I don't want to dick around with it as it stands. There we go. Much better. Put that in a nice place. Not sure who's in here, but whoever is, I'm glad you're here. And in about 7 minutes, we'll actually start with content. I am going to be reviewing today, for those that aren't privy. I think I talked with Kurai about it and Carol, go figure. I'm going to be reviewing my fights with Demox that was taken 2 weeks ago now? I forget, because, yeah, it was 2 weeks. It was that week we had the really bad snow, or ice, excuse me, and it was like, oh no, it's going to be horrible, and then nothing happened. And then the week after, it was like, oh, it's supposed to be a nice day. Snow, just snow, lots of it. But I hope this Sunday night is finding everyone well, hanging out, not too crazy, stressed out or whatever. Well, lost two. Oh well. But It said we'll officially hang out at 7. Trying to think. You guys, Zarl, you been hitting up Nightford of late? Because I know you were there the week I was there. A few, that 2 weeks ago when we had that ice. And didn't get to fight you as much as I would have liked. There was a few things I wanted to, work on with you, but next time we'll hit it up and we'll kick some butt. Alrighty. Oh, yeah, that'll do it. I've heard people like wrist straps. I mean, people use them. Himmel uses them. I don't get it, man. I guess maybe it's because I have super fat arms. I cannot wear wrist straps. They're just the death of me. Really makes me want to rip out my eyes with a cereal spoon. But yeah. So glad you guys are hanging out for these first 15 minutes of, I guess, would be test run, kind of chat, hang out. So just so, for you two that are here, I think how it's going to work, I have notes for all of these fights, but I actually gave my notes from our fights, Keaton and I's, to Keaton himself so he could look at it. And then I, of course, afterwards decided, oh yeah, I'm going to start live streaming this, and then lost my notes. And then, ironically, the second video I was going to do was Peter versus Bokdar. And I have looked up and down the internet, and it is gone. Just, it is so gone. So I spent my morning after I got home from work reanalyzing a different fight. But it's long, but it'll be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it. There'll be some stream of consciousness, some actually written notes. I've looked into programs like the sports commentators use, but I mean, they're just astronomically expensive. More expensive than like 2 or 3 of the instruments I own put together, and it's like, screw that. I am not paying that much money for a program I'd barely use. Let's see what the hell right now. Yeah, I know there's been times where my wrists have bugged me fighting. It's mostly my elbows, because when I first really figured out how to throw reverses decently, I was like, oh yeah, I'm strong as can be. I can throw them with my arms. I'm like, why does my elbow hurt? Ow. But, yeah. So, hopefully that clears up and we can get some good fighting in and kick some butt. Alright, 2 people. Well, you 2 people are bros. But, so, just kind of, putting out feelers for now before I'm officially starting here. Is there content that you would like to see that maybe OGN or Brennan EH, stuff like that, doesn't necessarily do? My goal with this is to stay more Belegarth centric instead of, the Amtgard cross game. Not because I view them as either inferior or lesser, but I think it'll reach the Belegarth community more if I focus on Belegarth things as a whole and Belegarth fighters. Well, Beldag, same thing. Instead of, Amtgarders that people hear about in stories or, whatever legends they may hear from yesteryear. 90s Texas Amtgard was an interesting place. But, yeah, just things that you'd be like, man, I would love to see videos like this done on Belegarth. Content, maybe, as I was saying, I wanted to do some interviews with big name fighters in Belegarth and Amtgard and Dag. Just kind of give people things like that, instructional videos, memes, the usual sort. But, yeah, it's looking fun. I'm actually really, really, really excited to start doing this. I've been sitting here kind of pacing the floor. Video games have not been... Yeah, I was agreeing with you there. Bell-centric videos. The big things, I don't necessarily feel there's a huge dichotomy between Bellegarth technique and Bellegarth technique and Amtgard technique. It just depends on our sufficient force rules and just weapon weighting. A lot of that, I think that's why Amtgard fighters do so well in Bellegarth versus the reverse of Bellegarth going to Amtgard. They tend to struggle more because I think it's easier to move up than it is to come back down. We do have an advantage where we pick up, you know, a 3-ounce Amtgard whipstick. It's like swinging around a paperweight, or not a paperweight, excuse me, a piece of paper. There we go. You know, words. Yeah. As I was saying, I'm going to try to have a talk with Archive and see if I can set up a time where I can either go out there and visit Damien and then go fight, but start doing more stuff that is Bellegarth centric. But yeah, it's 7 o'clock, so welcome whoever came in. I'm not sure. If you want to hang out and chat, always feel free. I will be clicking between my videos and my my stream thing here. Up there they go. Bye bye. Glad you were here. Come back. But yeah, so why don't we actually kind of get started? As I was telling these two, I'm not sure who's in, who's not, that I want to make a Bellegarth-centric learning page to where people can come and look at live streams on analysis, kind of get how I analyze things as a person who watches foam fighting videos a lot, because I enjoy it. If you want somebody to thank for the push, thanks Sir Killian, because he kind of, I don't want to say he goaded me into it, but he tickled my ego enough to make you say, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna make a live streaming thing and do all these things and blah 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 blah." Excuse me. One second. But yeah. So why don't we actually start? We got 2 watching right now, so I'll let you 2 kind of get the first crack. We're gonna actually start with my fights versus Demox. So I'm gonna click it over here. I'm going to go into full screen just because I think that way I can point things out a little better. If you want the sound, let me know and I will go to sound. But I personally don't like to hear the sound. For the most part, the Peter versus Braun video, I kind of make a few comments that, you know, vocality is a big thing, but for this, it's pretty clear who gets hit and who doesn't get hit because, you know, I'm a mountain, I'm a big fat guy. Keaton's a pretty big dude, so it's pretty easy to tell who is getting hit and who's not getting hit. Just checking chat. All right, why don't we go ahead and get started here. I'll put a little bit of sound. All right, that's probably a little bit on the loud side. While I'm here, I kind of want you guys to notice something here. First off, ignore my stance. I don't know what in the heck I'm doing here. But I want to bring your attention to Keaton's stance here. And this is kind of a theme that happens a lot throughout our fights. Prior to this, his stance, I think, is a little open. And this is kind of at a point of contention between a lot of fighting circles. Is, well, do I have a narrow stance or do I have a wide stance? And, oh, goodness gracious, hold on. Let me... Stupid American chat being nice and loud and obnoxious. But when it comes to stancing, it really, really boils down to your body. I'm going to let it roll for a little bit, just kind of to see. Yeah, this is kind of hard to see. You know, there's not a lot. Let me see if we could swing around here. But I personally like a much more narrow stance right there. So this is kind of a perfect example. I'm a 290-pound fat guy. If my legs are super far out, I'm not moving. There is no way in heck I'm going to be able to move my weight if my legs, my source of generation, is too far out. So as a big guy, I don't necessarily have to worry about the opposite, which is I get moved around if my feet are narrow because there's more mass to me, there's more strength. I'm stronger than a majority of the fighting field. So I can narrow my stance a little bit and be more mobile. Now, I want to go back here and actually talk about Keaton's stance. He's not as big as me, but he's close. He's way too wide right now. My feet are close, but this is kind of posturing. The wider the stance, the less you move. The more narrow the stance, the more you move. And as with everything, you know, there's a catch. The wider the stance, the less people move you. And the more narrow the stance, the more people move you. So if you're finding it hard to either stay on your feet when fighting, or people are bullying you and you're maybe a smaller fighter, experiment with widening your stance a little bit. You kind of want to find the happy medium between a wide base where you've got a lot of power, you're connected to the ground, you're activating your hips, your ab muscles, and all these things that are going to give you that power generation, versus, you know, somebody a little bit bigger and taller and he's just throwing you around like a rag doll. But I'm going to kind of check. So, cool. Welcome to the ones that are watching. I'm glad you are here. Just so you guys know, I'm going to flick between my videos here and chat, just so I can see if people are posing questions or, you know, asking, and we can kind of, you know, keep in contact. Welcome, welcome, welcome. All right, so let's actually get into some analysis here. So I tend to do this a lot. I really enjoy switching in and out of stances. I find myself gravitating towards a board foot forward just from having a fighting crush on Delos, just because Delos is great. But I think Belegarth as a whole moved to the right foot forward so much that left foot forward kind of became uncharted territory. There's a few that do it, but they're either newer fighters or have no idea of the potential that the offensive side of having your board foot forward brings. So let me roll the video. Now, this is how not to cross 101. I don't necessarily know why I throw such a deep cross here. This is not the best thing to do, but I kind of bail myself out here. I know what I'm doing. Essentially, what I'm trying to do is, if somebody's throwing across, as I've talked with a lot of people about this lately, they're either trying to get you to do something, freeze you, or tell you to back off. In this instance, I'm throwing to see what he's going to do. Another thing I want to note here is that when you're throwing across, my elbow doesn't come up too high, so it's not an ultra high cross. Probably not the safest thing in the world. As you can see, the elbow is still kind of in that plane of body. It's not arm out, you know, thrown to the back sword side hip. But my hand stays home, because there's this response. I know if I throw a cross to his hand, more often than not, 90% of Belegarth fighters are going to throw back. They're going to throw a cross again. They're going to come back and throw that cross. There's a lot of application here. One of the simplest things and kind of the most cheeky but also safe and useful is getting people into what I would dub as a cross return pattern. Generally, you as the fighter would take the lead and you throw a nice short cross right into their hand. And as I was saying, most people are going to throw right back. They're going to throw a cross right back at you. That gives you the place to either stuff them out and return with either a chop or a short cross or something a little less safe, maybe a little bit of a higher cross, maybe a reverse, but just some sort of response in addition to that, and you've dictated the fight. You've essentially said, You are going to do what I want you to do because I know how you are going to react to what I do. And throwing to the hand is really a great way to elicit these responses. Here, it doesn't really lead to anything. It leads to a reset. I do want to address resetting while I'm here because I do bring it up in the Peter versus Braun video. There is nothing wrong with resetting. There's kind of this stigma about, oh, you know, they're backing up, they're resetting. If your plan goes awry, don't try to stretch it into something. Either reset or get them to do something to where you could take advantage and expose a weakness. Don't try to, oh, you know, I'm going to stretch this into something. No. If you're out, if you're exposed, if you don't know what they're going to do, reset the fight. Move back and away and just reset the fight. Throw to their hand, freeze them, do something so that you essentially put the fight back in neutral, which is what happens here. All right, I'm going to let the video play a little bit. This is painful. I don't necessarily know if it's, you know, an actual, you know, in-motion fighting thing, or it's just kind of the disgustingness that is stopping a moving picture. But this, ladies and gentlemen, is how you do not throw an over-the-top wrap. Like, yikes. So things of note here. Keaton's stance, D-Mox's stance, excuse me, isn't horrible here. He's got a lot of weight on this, would be his right foot, and he's not very mobile in this moment in time. So there's not a lot he can do. A lot of my weight's on my left foot, so I'm in not much of a better stance. And as you'll see, this becomes a, you know, a grind fest versus, you know, moving your feet and accomplishing a goal by movement. This is not necessarily where you want to be. I don't think his shield placement is horrible, but I think he can accomplish the same thing with a more presented punch shield versus raising his punch up. Instead of coming this way with his punch, if his arm was a little lower but out further, he accomplishes the same thing. Even if I manage to come over to the top of his shield here, there's going to be no power in it. And he'll call light and punish me for being horribly out of position. So keep in mind is that a lot of times people that use a punch shield tend to fall back into strap habits. It doesn't necessarily go the other way. Straps don't fall into punch habits because the strap is such a neutral form of shield work versus a punch. The punch is going to cut angles. It's not going to block your body neutrally or passively as a strap shield would. You have to cut the angle. It's akin to a goaltender in hockey coming out to meet a breakaway. That's how you're going to block with a punch shield. And right now, his extension on his punch isn't horrible. It's not too much. It's a little bit in, but it's not bad. But if he comes down and out a little bit, I think he has a lot more success and is much safer. Yeah, this is grind fighting. It happens. This is very sloppy on my part. This just makes me want to vomit. But notice, I mean, I tag his arm, which is great. He does tag my leg. I was slow to go down. It was one of those weird, messy slop, you know. People are buttering each other with their swords, and it's just weird. As always, make sure you're vocal. I have a problem with this to where I assume that people are privy enough to know if they hit me or not. And sometimes they don't. And you don't want to cause conflict. You just be vocal. If you're late to something, say, you know what, hey, I think you tagged me here. You know, let's continue. So I'll let it roll. Yeah, and I say, like, yeah, you hit me in the leg, blah, 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 blah. But, all right. This is a big thing. if you are going to throw outside, right now he's hand matched with me. He is fighting my dominant hand with his non-dominant hand, and he's armed. It's not bad to do it in a single sword fight or against a two-sticker, but it's dangerous. Here, I'm going to go back, and I want you guys to look at this. That is the utter worst thing you could probably do. And I think I talked to them about this. If you are fighting a legged opponent and you throw outside, you are asking to be thrown in on inside, and you're going to get hit. I don't punish him for it. I wish I punished him for it. Don't throw outside in a scenario like this. It is the worst thing you can do. But with that being said, it's like anything. Nothing is inherently bad. There are things that are more dangerous, more risky, maybe not as safe, and this is not safe at all. I think what he's trying to do here, he's trying to throw for my back leg, but he is about a step and a half too far away from me, so it ends up getting eaten by my board, and I dominate the fight because he now has to fight my board and my sword, and he has nothing. So I'm going to let it roll. Kind of a typical, excuse me, a typical response here. Throws, cross, trying to tag my board side shoulder, throw at his arm. Nothing really you see here. That's a nice fake. That is a beautiful, beautiful fake. Excuse me. Sorry. Getting over being sick or getting sick, I'm not entirely sure. But you can accomplish a lot by body movement and pump faking. It wasn't a huge pump fake. It wasn't ridiculous. But I think what really sells this on him is the fact that his body moves. So watch this. His body moves. He sinks in. He comes down. His center of gravity shifts. We as human beings watch for center of gravity. When we see it move, our brains tend to say, this person is moving in X direction or whatever. And we compensate, especially in a competitive setting or a combat setting like this. But his left poses absolutely zero threat. I think the better option, instead of throwing cross body here to try to tag something that's realistically pretty far away from him, is that pump, but pump down and out and throw inside. So what I mean by that is right here, he pumps out. Instead of throwing back over here, throw in here. Throw right in that juicy inside seam. This is kind of an old favorite of the old Texas Rogues, is to pump out and throw in, or pump in and throw out. This happened a lot. I got tagged by this quite a bit. It's generally safer. You don't want to be in this scenario, but it happens. So I'm going to let it roll. Yeah, and that happens. So I'm going to check chat really quick. No, nothing. Glad you guys are here. All right. All right. Oh, excuse me. All right, let's take a look at this. This is kind of OG Beldag, you know, 2009, 2010, when people were learning how to throw sword side hips. It's not bad. I like it, but I don't think he executes it well. Now, here we kind of have an interesting situation. He's trying to use his board as a decoy to get me to budge, and he's going to throw back to either, it looks like my arm or my hip. I'm assuming it's my arm here, just by the placement of his hand. His hand isn't low enough for a hip. It's going to get caught by my board here, so I'm assuming it's for my right arm. But there's no threat to it. There was nothing to set this up. He just threw it. In the next video, Braun does it, but Braun does it probably the next step, the next evolution of it, and it's cheeky. So if you're gonna do this, do something. Step with the direction your board is gonna go. Freeze them. Do something to get them not into a place to where they can say that this is no threat, and I'm going to just stand here and soak it with my board. So I'm gonna go back, let it play. His shield's a little tucked here, but I'm going to attribute that to just him coming back from his shot. I want you to look at my feet. That wasn't a great step, but even then, I'm not landing with my heel first. And this is a big thing I see a lot of people do. When fighters move in Belgarth, they tend to step heel toe, heel toe. Keaton is very, he's very sunk into that frame during this sequence of fights. You cannot be on your heels. That you just will not move. If you want to never move, spread your feet out really far apart and move on your heels. You won't ever move. What you want to do is glide across the ground surface. I always tell people to imagine you have a tennis ball or like reverse Heelys, like those stupid shoes people used to wear back in, like the early 2000s, late 90s. Imagine your feet are gliding on those. The weight is forward on your feet to where you're mobile, and your foot will glide along the ground. That's going to give you a really nice, clean set of footwork and will make you much more mobile. Let this roll. Okay, right there. Now, in the past few years, we've had an advent of throwing reverse wraps. I love throwing a reverse wrap. I mean, it's just a ton of fun. The thing is, with everything, you have to be aware of where most people are going to throw back to. If you throw a reverse, their primary response is to cross you and to throw to your arm, or most likely your shoulder. Because you've got to do some work to throw a reverse wrap. The primary, I mean, that's a big, nice response, but I would throw deeper. I would throw to the shoulder or throw to the bicep. That's just, it's asking to be hit. So you, as the thrower of that reverse wrap, you have to, as quickly as possible, after you feel you've made sufficient force, come into your protection. You have to cover that response. And then, this is one thing I like to do a lot. I'm going to go back here. Is when people throw on me, I like to time them and counter. Especially on either crosses or, not crosses, excuse me, legs like this or board side wraps. Because it's a deep motion and they have to work for it. It gives me the ability to either shift my feet and cut their angle and throw into them. Or to just do what I do here. I don't think I move my feet. Oh, yeah. I move my... No, I'm already slipping it, and this is neutral and not how you should stand, but it happens. This is just... I saw where he was throwing, and I just timed him. There's kind of a stigma about timing. I mean, it's fighting. It's using your body to your advantage. It's using your opponent's habits and their times to your advantage. Remember, you want to drive the bus of a fight at all times. You don't want to be passive. You want to come up with your plans. You want to be the one to dictate the fight. Even if, they may be a better fighter than you, in your mind, you have to be driving the bus. You need to be saying, this person is fighting the way I want them to. And if they aren't, then you need to either make them or reset your fight. All right, let's let it roll. Let's talk about legs. if you're this close to somebody, throwing a leg in such a deep way is just asking to get hit. It really is. You aren't able to throw safely. There's not a lot of coverage, and you're just in a weird spot here. Because all I have to do is shift my weight a little bit, and nothing happens. You hit my garb. All right, let's let it roll. See, I do this a lot. The reason being is I feel, as I explained earlier, this is uncharted territory for Beldag. Fighting left foot forward, but with dynamic shot placement. A lot of times, people that fight with board foot forward tend to just, it's their defensive stance. Their shield's the closest target. The angles are cut. There's just a lot more shield versus a lot more sword. But this left foot forward allows for a lot of things. And I'm going to let it roll because you'll see why. Also, Kurai, if you're in here, you'll recognize this. So, this is why exploration of your board foot forward is kind of a thing to do if you do fight primarily board. Move left, throw right. Putting yourself in a board foot forward is naturally going to give you a deeper wrap for not as much effort. You could throw the same wrap right foot forward, but you've got to throw, thumb down, the deepest, heaviest skyhook you can. Your shoulder's got to be all the way up. Or you could step to your left foot and throw a more neutral, kind of pretty much a flat wrap with a little bit of shoulder lean up and get the same angle just by switching your feet. We'll talk a little bit about right foot versus left foot later on, but all that happens here, I move left, my body moves left, I throw right, and he gets tagged. So I'm going to come back so you can see what happened. Just move left, throw right, the Pavel Datsuk special. All right. I remember what I was talking about a reverse wrap here. I'm sorry, not a reverse wrap. Throwing to a hand. What happens? I throw to his hand, everything comes back. This is what freezing looks like. And this is why you throw to hands. You throw short crosses, to hands. You can freeze your opponent. And what happens when you freeze your opponent and their guard comes back in? You throw pretty reverse wraps. And you throw them with minimal threat. Because they're frozen. Their body is not responding to what you are doing. They're focused on, he just hit me in hand. Why? What's going on here? You essentially get a free motion to throw. So, I missed. Oh, I hate when this happens. I do this more than I would care to admit. The reason I miss is it actually has to do with the position of my hand when I throw the reverse. My hand, my position is down instead of a little more up. If the sword tip and my hand and thumb is a little more up, it goes right into his hip pocket, and I win. This is what we would call a little bit more of a lateral reverse. This is when you're very deep or out of range, and you fake them and throw at range, instead of in a little bit more of a tight quarter, where the closer you get, the more your sword tip has to raise to tag them in the hip. The farther out you are, you don't have to necessarily compensate with the angle of your hand, because it becomes more of a speed game versus an angular game. So I miss. It's embarrassing crud. I could even tell. That's my stank face. Like I'm like, oh, I can't believe I didn't just tag him in the hip. But gut, kill him. That's great. Same thing. Move one way, throw another. Right now, this is a legit high cross. Like, this is the highest of crosses. This is OG Yaktu crossing. In this situation, it's not great, but it's not horrible. Because as it stands, my board right now is in the way of his sword. So he would have to get through my board and his board, which is a little high, to throw back against all this nice juiciness right here. And I just tag him, and I win. Let me check chat really quick. Awesome. Oh, we got some more people. Welcome, welcome. Hope everything is finding you well. So let's continue with watching Trogdor fight poorly. Vocality is a very important thing. I have a huge weakness in this area. The more vocal you are, the better. Even if you have to dictate everything that happens, that's a better fate than people saying, oh, well, you're cheating or this and that. This puts you above reproach. Talk. Use your voice. This is probably the best stance I've seen Demox do all day. Or all video. His feet have come in a little bit, and I think he's picked that up innately, so that he's realizing even me, who's not moving a lot, or not moving nearly as much as I normally do, and moving circles around him. His feet have come in, his weight is still on his heels, you can see just there's a little bit of air between that toe, but this is a little bit better. His shield's in a decent spot, his guard may be a little high, but then again, I mean, high guard is not necessarily the end of the world if you know what's going to happen. It's like anything. Everything you do has an equal and opposite reaction or a consequence. You could have a higher guard, but you have to say, people are going to do X because I do this. And you could use that to your advantage. So, if you're going to put in a high guard, know that juiciness right there is just asking for it. Is that all I have to do is work you a little bit more up, and it's reverse city. But I'm going to let it roll. I love doing this. This is not a very safe shot. I think what I was going for was I've beat him like 4 or 5 times in a row. I'm going to see how afraid of his sword side hip I can make him. The more afraid of something a fighter is, the more you as the dictator of the fights have to work with. I know if I can net a board through the board, sword side hip stab like that, it's going to put a lot of doubt in that fighter's mind. Things that could be done better here, throwing from the right foot for that stab is throwing from distance. You're using it to catch them at a distance. Throwing it from the left foot is actually the superior way to go. And it's probably what should have been done. With a left foot presentation, the angle changes, the stab is deeper, but it will also stick more. As you've got more of your body weight behind it, and just the angle changes to where you're throwing more into the center of mass versus, trying to skim their sword side hip, the patented I'm better than you shot. So if you're going to do this, this is not bad, but this is more dangerous and this is lower percentage. Switch your feet up and you tend to net that a little more. Again, this is timing. This is okay. I want to bring your attention to this. Step back a little bit. So I actually went back too far. I'm left foot forward right now. I switched my feet. Keep that in mind. I switched my feet. What I'm doing right now is something I've kind of picked up from watching videos of Delos talking about shot slipping. I've found that you can accomplish small forms of shot slipping by flowing in between board foot and sword foot forward. It accomplishes the same thing. You're changing an angle. You're moving outside. You're taking your body out of the fight and leaving his body in the fight. Right now, I'm shifting back to left foot forward. That leaves me. He has to fight my sword, his board, and my board to throw back at me. He's going to throw a leg, more than likely, and he's going to miss. I'm slipping it, he gets tagged. And also there's some slight angle change between throwing across with your right foot and throwing across with your left foot. It's not a ton, but this is something to explore. Is that see what your feet can do for you. See when people throw on you, see what shifting your stance can do. You don't have to make big movements. You could step in from right to left or step back left to right or step in right to left and see what happens. This kind of ties into lateral movement, left, right. And when I mean pure left, right, to where if we're facing this light thing here, you know, this is forward, this is back, left, right. There's a lot of uncharted territory for Bellegrim here. Coming this way at, you know, like imagine there's a Y coming this way, that's not bad. But as I was saying, you could accomplish those same motions by switching your feet with minimal stepping, and you accomplish the same thing with less effort. All right, let's let it roll. Yeah, 5. All right. This is something I notice Bellegarth fighters do a lot. When we tap swords and we get ready to fight, right now, this is starting way, way, way too close. You never, ever want to start a fight this close. Another step back, so if Keaton or Demox took a step back, it'd be perfect. If I took a step back, it'd be perfect. Right now, we're on really the edges of our ranges, but no planning really happens here. This is where things start to, where plans and machinations come into being. This is where your plan that you thought of is now being executed. This is not a good place to line up. This is whoever has the longer swords or faster hands, without a thought, is probably going to win. Or is, you know, maybe a cheekier fighter or a better fighter. If you're tapping swords, you want to start just to where they'd have to take a step to hit you. Maybe even a half step. That's your planning range. That's where you're saying, you know, I think fighter X is going to do this, this, and this. I'm going to see what I can get away with and beat into him, or see what things I can get him to do that I want and know that I'm gonna win. So don't start so close. Same thing. If I step with my left and throw that stab, the angle changes. Let's see if I can freeze it. I mean, as it stands, I'm not going to hit anything with. If I'm on my left foot, first off, this, I don't have to move my shield over to cover that. And second, I've got a much stronger angle into that juicy underbelly here. This is really, if you're going to throw that stab, if you're far back, right is okay. If you're this close, switch to your left. So, I know where I picked this up. I've seen him do it 100 times. This is not necessarily the greatest way to throw a reverse wrap. I kind of picked it up as a habit and am athletic enough that I don't get punished a lot. Notice, my plan goes awry. Oh God, what do? Back up. And notice the direction I back up. It's not huge, but it's back and at an angle. That cuts his throwing angles. That takes me out of the fight, my body, but still keeps his arm and a little bit of, you know, these goody underbits here in the fight. So if you're going to retreat or reset the fight, which in a situation like this, you know, I totally whiff, like big time, just totally big time whiff. This is not a good place to be. Reset the fight. He throws 2 crosses, cross return, gets tagged. Notice the cross here. Oh, sorry. So, notice the cross. That's safe. That is really realistically safe. His board is in no man's land. His hand is not horrible, but it's a little high. But if you're going to throw a cross, throw a safe cross. Don't go ham unless you're trying to get them to either be afraid of it or, you know, say, oh, this person's just going to throw high crosses on me all day, and then you punish them. So I'm going to let it roll. All right. This is a very hard thing for people to do, especially against an opponent that is up an arm or up a limb. Holding onto your shield, especially with a strap and kind of like trying to downstick them, is the absolute worst possible thing you can do. You will more than likely win more fights by fighting single sword than holding onto your board. This is why working your single sword against a boarded opponent is very important. You can ask a lot of people that may know me personally or have seen me fight. I can still kill people if I'm armed. That is a really important skill for board fighters and two-stick to really have. Is if you get armed, you should still be a threat. If you are not a threat when you are armed, you're going to lose. And that's what happens. His left right now is not a threat. I mean, right now I'm looking, saying, okay, his left is not a threat. I'm just going to... I forget. I think I throw out on him. Oh, I crossed him. Neat. Yeah. I do agree with you, Zarl. Hobbit's really good at communicating in fights. The few times I fought him, I always know what's happening. Killian is actually probably the best I know at communicating during fights. Steve kind of gives a play-by-play, and it's always really good. I know what's happening. I know if there's a contention, it's spoken about. But that's really a good way to be. So if you want to have a model for who to communicate like, Sir Killian is definitely the one. All right. Same thing. Throws deep. Sink in with it. Tag him. Now, this throwing a leg that deep is going to lead to what just happened, getting hit. If you're going to throw at their legs, first off, I'm right foot forward. This is a quicker leg to throw at. The shot can be, instead of having to come around to throw at my back left leg, to throw a chop down into the quadricep. That's the safest and quickest because your board is still in the way, and it's just a very quick chop. It's throwing a chop. It's just throwing a chop to a leg. So if you're going to throw a leg in a situation like this, throw to their right leg. Because that happens. All right. Now, if you're a fat guy and you want to see how to move, this is how you move. Notice my feet. Gliding on the ground. My feet are always, when I'm moving, my weight is here. My weight is not here. The more your weight is here, the less you move. I don't know why I did that. I guess I'm posing. Yep, and then you get hit.
Keaton, you're way leaned over there. Neutral stance.
All right. Absolutely not. Neutral stance. So a neutral stance here does one of two things. First off, it gives me the entire range of both your hips. Not just one of your hips, both of your hips. So pick a foot. You don't have to have a huge stance, but pick a foot. Fighting with your feet parallel like that is not the way to go. I can't believe I missed. This is something I like to do, is to circle their board and to essentially trick them into thinking I'm going to come back over the top, but I don't, and then I throw back and tag them, normally into hip, but I again miss. Uh,
So,
this is general Belagarth leg fighting, grind fighting. It works. It's effective. I don't like it, but it does its job.
is that 9? That's 9? Probably, yeah.
All right, let's see. Again, left foot presentation, and then just posturing. A lot of posturing. So that's a similar movement to what I did before, is move left, throw right with the left foot forward, and he covers it pretty well. I think this is the last fight, and I do something really cheeky here. So, I want to bring your attention, all you guys' attention. Right now, his feet are pretty neutral, as he was told to fight neutrally. As I said, this not only opens up whatever whatever side of your body is presented, it opens up the other one. So watch what happens here. I'm thinking I'm going to throw to his hand, freeze him, and then throw to his hip. That is why... Oh, I want to go back here. So, a neutral stance leads to having your entire body exposed. This planes your shoulders. This takes some things out of the fight and presents other things. Picking a foot and sticking to a stance gives you essentially know where they're going to go. Your body, they say, I could see this, this, and this. This thing, I could say, oh, I can hit his arm, I can hit his sword side hip, I can hit his leg with, minimal effort. But a neutral stance takes this, which is covered by distance in a shield, and brings it in. Remember, right there. See where he is right here? This is why you don't do this. Right now, his entire body is exposed to me. He kind of corrects, but it's too late. I've thrown to his hand, his guard, everything is shifted up because I've thrown up, and then butt scoop. But, all right, I'm going to check chat. Yeah. Yeah. I'll turn autoplay off. But, yeah. Any questions on that one before I move on? If there's anything, you have a question on, if we want to talk about, whether it be from these fights, anything I've discussed, so that way we can kind of, make sure we're on the same page. Oh, hey man, how's it going? I'm glad to see you're here. So we have another member of Mountain Style here. But if you guys have questions, now's the time. I'm going to take a little bit and answer some questions, kind of chat at you. And then we're going to shift over into Peter versus Braun. It's a really entertaining fight. There's a lot of good stuff going on. Obviously, we've all seen Peter fight. We know what he does. We know realistically he's the best in Belagarth. A lot of people contend that, but I've fought a lot of people. Peter is easily the best in Belagarth. Braun is a very interesting fighter. He's got that southern dag flair, and it's really cool to watch. It's different. It's unique. He does a lot of things that we kind of do, but he does them to a higher degree, and it's really a cool thing to watch. So some things I would like people to get out of those fights. Your feet will do wonders for you. The more your feet move, the smarter your feet move, and the more your feet move, you tend to win more fights. Footwork makes the dream work is the old adage that the Texas Torches will throw around. It's the truth. But I want you guys to see if you could take it a step further. See what your feet can do for you, to kind of twist the words of JFK. See what every action of your feet will do, and what'll happen. See what you could do. See what you can cut down. See what you can open up. See how you could distance them. See if moving a certain way, what it opens up, what it shuts down. That's fighting intelligently, and that's really the first step from going from a good fighter to a great fighter, is understanding what you do, why you do it, and how it's going to make them react, how it's going to make them act. You don't necessarily have to be completely 100% cognizant of it at all times. But when you're practicing, especially in sparring like this, take the mental time to think about it. Use your brains. And practice. Be cheeky. Be looking to push the envelope. And sometimes the things you see from me that I may do, that Peter may do, that other fighters may do, you may be able to learn it, but you may have to manipulate it. You may have to adjust it. And that's one thing that really will grow your fighting exponentially. So I'm not seeing any questions. I kind of looked at it, but I didn't notice it. Yeah, Zarl, I kind of made note. His stance is very square, which leads to, if you get board side hip drapped, you're doing something wrong. I hate to say it. Chimera does it a lot, and he does it effectively. But if you move your feet, these things will happen. All right, so let's actually go into Braun versus PTQ. I've got about half of this fight cataloged here in my little book that I use to keep this. And as kind of a point of humor, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I have 13 pages of analysis. See, yeah, I know I can throw hip wraps and I can do all these things, but you make it exponentially easier on the person fighting you to tag you in weird places if your stance is square. So, don't have a square stance. All right, let's go to Peter versus Braun. These are some really good fights. All right, let me turn down the sound. All right. I want to bring your attention to this here. I kind of discussed this in my fight with D-Mox. We as Belagarth fighters tend to line up after we've tapped swords really close to each other. Right now, both fighters can throw. If they wanted to throw, both fighters could throw. I have it marked as 6 seconds here, so let me actually bump it to 6 seconds. So Braun has shifted his foot, but right now both people are in swinging range. We as Belagarth fighters tend to line up here. This is not really the thing you want to do. Braun doesn't get punished for standing so close for one of two reasons. The first one being, obviously right now they're kind of just posturing. They're not really throwing. They're not doing anything to elicit a response. But if you're going to tap swords, you're going to start maybe a step back. Maybe a half a step back from either of them, and that's where you want to start. All right, let's keep going here. All right. Board foot forward is not necessarily the greatest thing on a matched hand here. Essentially, it brings this juiciness into this sword's area. Braun doesn't get punished because he's really athletic, and he's a great fighter. But use it sparingly. It's not horrible. Now, with that being said, this is freaking beautiful. This is utterly beautiful. Now, I'm kind of going to spit in the face of what I just said. what happens here is he's actually throwing outside. There's an old adage that really kind of has fallen out of favor with the Amir X-Rogues, is that it's cold outside. You don't necessarily want to throw inside, or excuse me, outside. You want to generally work for your inside. But Bronn does something here that's really cheeky. He covers his movement and throwing outside by moving left. He's moving left and he's throwing back against the movement of his body. Two things are happening here. One, it opens, look, I mean, right now, Aaron is doing what Aaron is always going to do in this situation. The person threw outside, his left covers it. This gives him what's called a win condition and just lets him throw freely with that right hand. But Bronn really cheekily, I mean, this is really well executed. It's beautiful. Is he throws outside and he's moving left. His board is covering this response with his left. And he takes a step. Notice he's on his right now. Prior to this, he's on his left, shifts, he covers his distance. He throws out, gets Aaron's left to move out. The right's coming. He steps in with his right. He's now gained a bunch of distance. Aaron's arms are in no man's land. His left is down. His right is throwing a wrap. He slips the shot by stepping right. The angle changes. The wrap is gone. And Bronn just stabs the shit out of him. This is beautiful. This is utterly beautiful. Like, just... Another thing to keep in mind, don't let your hands be in no man's land. If you're fighting two-stick, one of your hands has to stay home. Right? What kind of happens here is Bronn, from the execution I just said, he forces Aaron's hands into no man land, and then Aaron just gets the shit stabbed out of him. All right, let's let it roll. There's a lot of talking in this one and a lot of posturing, so the next timestamp I have is at 44 seconds, which is what should have been done earlier. So I'm going to let it roll. You know, look at the majestic clouds of Oktoberfest, and oh, here comes Falcor in the back, or Chadwick. He likes to interrupt this, and it makes for hard analysis. Now, same thing here. I want you to notice one of two things. The first being, Bronn's punch shield is so damn close to his body. This is not where you want a punch shield. However, two things. Bronn is in really damn good shape and can move himself out of trouble. The second, his shield is actually a little bit bigger than most standard round punch shields. Most standard round punch shields are about 24 to 26 inches. His is about 28. I think he just took a 28-inch blank and put a punch core in it. So he can get away with a little bit more tucking because his shield is more akin to a traditional strap shield. But as a rule, if you're using a punch, do not tuck your shield. All right, let's let it roll. He does the same thing. Literally what he just did that I was praising the ever-living heck out of. He does the same thing. But I'm going to let it roll and notice the difference. Aaron doesn't get tagged for one of two reasons. One, Bronn misses. He actually stabs outside instead of stabbing inside. The big reason, look at where Aaron's right hand is. His right hand stayed home. And what I mean by that is his right hand is in no man's land, but it is not out here. He's not coming for the win condition yet, so his hand has stayed a little more home. His right comes back down to block what just happened to him, and he survives. And then they get into, you know, oh my God, that's beautiful. So let's talk about this. As I said, if you're going to fight two-stick, one of your hands has to stay home. And what I mean by that is your right hand, especially versus a right-hand board fighter, your left hand is the one that should be doing most of the killing. Your right hand, excuse me, is there to protect yourself and to expose a weakness. He doesn't get stabbed because his right hand is covering his left. His left hand is doing something, his right hand is covering it. And Aaron's hands are really, really fast, so his right doesn't have to necessarily be as close to home as more average fighters may, but you keep that hand home, you don't get stabbed. Now, let's talk about this. Look at what's happening here. Bronn is moving left. He's got a board foot forward presentation, moves left, throws right. Pavel Datsyuk, dead. This is really pretty. There's a lot of really just beautiful, beautiful shots here. Bronn is moving him left and just throws right back. Because most of his body is coming left and at an angle. Everything in Aaron's mind is noticing that shift in the body weight. And that just leads, I mean, Bronn throws back, and it's really nice. I keep bringing up the Pavel Datsyuk. That's because he was known for skating left or shooting right, or skating right and shooting left in hockey. And it's kind of the same principle, is you're using your body and your motion to draw them, and then you're throwing it back to where they once were. So yeah, here comes Chadwick to, you know, interrupt the fight. Go figure. Some things to note. Aaron's hands were a little tucked, but then again, I mean, it was just beautiful. It was just a really a beautiful shot. Let's see, I got some notes here. Oh, we're already past him. Cool. So, if you generally take videos of things, focus on the fighting. You want to keep fighting in the center of the camera, which, I mean, obviously, we're not cinematographers. We're not all these things, so take it with a grain of salt. Just keep fighting focused. I have a note here. The Chadwick comes in. I'm like, piss off, Chadwick. That's not nice. Chadwick's a really nice guy, but right now we're focusing on these fighting. I don't know who's videoing, but yeah. All right. This is the third time he's done that. At this point, it starts to be, Aaron starts reading it, because there's no threat anymore, that Aaron has figured it out. And then Aaron can either retreat and disengage the fight, which he does here a little bit, or he can punish him over the top, which happens later. God, this is a beautiful shot. This is just beautiful. D-Mox did something similar, but I want to bring up some of the differences here. It all comes down to the movement of Bronn's body. This is really a low percentage thing, but he has success for a few reasons. Right now, Aaron's left hand is tucked and his right is extended. Now notice what happens here. Both hands are really close to his body here. They're close. This is not where you want your hands. Like an inch or two out, this doesn't land. But let's talk about Bronn, because this is the thing of beauty. He's actually throwing back against his movement, so he's moving right and throwing back left into an arm, which is kind of it's a safer target selection versus throwing to his hip. He's using the board along with his body movement as both a coverage, because this is generally going to be the first response. If somebody's throwing back over here, he's covering. But it also draws Aaron's attention with the body to the right, and he throws back against it. And this is really pretty. Tucks his hand under his guard, or under his board, and tags him in the arm. Just, yeah, that's really pretty. Now, I do want to bring this up. In a 1v1 fight, this is very obviously a 1v1 sparring fight. There is nothing wrong to me with holding onto your sword. It is painfully obvious that that sword is useless. If Aaron blocks with it, he's dead. Like, if it touches his hand, he's dead. On a field drop your sword, make it very well known that your sword is dead or your arm is dead. Either tuck it. I generally don't because I don't want to screw up my shoulder. I sometimes will not drop my swords on fields because I spend a lot of time making my swords and I don't want them either to be picked up by somebody or stepped on. But you need to be careful with that. The safest thing is on a big field, drop your sword. Make it known that your arm's hit and you're gold. But in this situation, I don't think this is a problem. And I really don't get why people get so incredibly upset about it. But I want to let it go. Aaron's range control here is really good. The swords are about of equal length, but he's essentially controlling the range to get Braun to throw, which Braun does throw, but Aaron doesn't respond in the most optimal of ways. If you're single sword on a board, you have to start moving your feet a lot more. You're going to backpedal a little more. You're going to have to use lateral movement a little more. You're going to have to do things to take that out of the fight and make him fight his own board. Moving this way, he has to throw back against his board. You can catch him moving this way, kind of brings this into the scene, but you can also do it in a way to where he's throwing into no man's land and you got all that good cheekiness. So let's kind of let it roll. That's like the 5th time Braun's thrown outside. It's not necessarily bad to throw outside on a 2-stick or on a, but you've got to know is that he doesn't get thrown in on. There is no response from Aaron here, so he essentially gets a free throw. The usual response to somebody throwing out against a hand match, so they're right, you're right on their left, or their left on your right, is you throw out, they block you out, they throw back in. That's more than likely going to happen. There's a few things you can do here. If you're going to throw out, move. And what I mean by that is move laterally. If you're going to throw out against the left, move laterally to the right. So move this way a little bit. You move that way, your board then comes into that inside lane, and your inside lane, excuse me, and then you could throw to his inside lane or out, and you're in a much